Ladies and gentlemen, this is According to Callus, and this is a Friday with episode 104, and it's a 5 for Friday. Now, if you saw the video intro, you'll know what they are, but we're going to just jump right on in the interest of time. And it is Friday, so time is important because it's after 5 o'clock. Hey, listen. Number 1, Feckless leadership fails Texas. Now imagine if you go and look up the word feckless, you're going to find a lot of Republican leaders there, not to mention a lot of Democrats. Why? Because quite frankly, they're careless, irresponsible, and just don't want to do anything. The dictionary also says feeble, ineffective, weak, useless, or worthless. And I got to tell you, at the state level, that's a pretty good explanation of what we're dealing with. And, you know, as a Republican, it is incumbent upon me to back the Republicans to the extent possible. But that requires that they actually show up. That requires that they actually bring their A game. And just because they're sitting in Austin weeping and moaning because the Democrats left and they won't play nice. So you get the stuff done. You kick them off. You punish them. You arrest them. You do something. You don't just do nothing. Hey, you know, I appreciate the fact that it's, you know, great fundraising ads for our local Republicans. Actually, all statewide, the Republicans are making hay off of this. But you know what? The Democrats are doing the same exact thing. And nothing gets done. And we look stupid. I remember when they pulled this garbage in 2018 in Wisconsin, I believe it was. The Democrats all fled so they could break the quorum. And you know what? They still got stuff done in Wisconsin. They didn't play that game. Yet, here in Texas, the feckless leadership failed. It's really difficult for Texas to lead the way when our leadership refuses to do that job. And for that reason, that is item number 1 on my 5 for Friday, the feckless leadership that failed Texas. Number 2, fraudulent leadership fails Collin County. Undoubtedly, you saw we made the news. There was a little spat against the district clerk, or let me rephrase that, with the district clerk making hay against the county commissioner's court. In particular, going after the county judge. Well, I happen to have seen some of the information that's put out, and quite frankly, I'm surprised that somebody that, according to the records I saw, basically wasn't at work for 6 months while mandating the rest of their employees had to be there and would make no accommodations for their medical needs. But hey, there was a pandemic, so I can just stay out of state. I'm sorry. I'm used to that behavior out of our Democrat leadership, and quite frankly, some of the Republican leadership is guilty of it too. But I expect better from the district clerk. I expect better from somebody that went to the time and trouble to not only get a law degree, but then to come back to her home county and run for a position that she clearly wanted, to then just not do it. And apparently, the apparent conflict of interest is why we no longer are able to process applications for a passport to go abroad. Now, I got to tell you, honestly, I don't know where I would want to go abroad right now. I can't think of any other country where it's not worse than what it is here. But, you know, the cruise ships are operating again, and it may be incumbent upon me to get a passport. But because of an apparent conflict of interest, we can no longer provide that service in Collin County. We'd have to go down to Dallas, or up to Grayson, or over to Tarrant, or Denton, because our district clerk found it unnecessary to play nice with the State Department. That's kind of your job when you're an elected official, to play nice. Now, sometimes playing nice isn't called for, like when people are trampling liberty, when people are abusing their power, when people are overstepping their authority in the Constitution. But none of that seems to be the case here. The abuse of power seems to have, in fact, been coming from the elected official that has the title district clerk. And that, my friends, is why fraudulent leadership, right, has failed Cowlin County. Number 3, faulty leadership fails the country. Now, in this instance, honestly, it's mostly all Democrats. Because, they have a majority, a very slim majority in the House. They have a very slim majority in the Senate. And they have the executive branch. And when they don't get their way, they just pretend the Supreme Court, which, a year ago was the final arbiter on all things, just doesn't matter. Why? Because, we're going to do it whatever we want, because Congress is going to Congress, the president's going to do his EOs, and, guess what? We have some more czars that think that they're not going to have to follow the law. They're not subject to the Constitution, and apparently even when SCOTUS tries to rein them in, they just do whatever they want. So now, those of you there that are federal supremacists, you ought to keep this in mind. If we can't rein in the feds when it's a bureaucrat, what are we going to do when the ATF comes a-knocking? What are you going to do when the IRS comes a-knocking? You're all going to be up creek. The faulty leadership is the president, or shall I say the resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Honestly, I don't understand how the guy got elected, if I were to believe he was elected, but clearly he's not mentally fit anymore to be serving as the leader of the free world. And then, come on. Kamala? She's not even a natural-born citizen. She isn't qualified to be the president, or the vice president, by that matter. Yet, that's what we're stuck with. That's what we're saddled with. We're told that's what we have to accept. And that's just faulty logic, faulty behavior, and faulty presence. And we tolerate it. Now, I know. I spent months talking about Texas Tuesday and Texit Tuesday. And that's there. That's still the final part of the process, right? But the same faulty leadership seems to be all over the map on various things. You can't travel. You can't go and do much of anything in a blue state, or if it was up to the president. But the border, well, that doesn't matter. We're just going to take those people and ship them into the interior. It'll be okay. Never mind, they're already planning on their future lockdowns because the Delta variant. Ooh. Yet, clearly, 20% or whatever of what's coming across the border is sick, or at least positive, as far as we know, the ones that we bother to test. But hey, that doesn't matter because this is a humanitarian thing, right? I fail to see how that's the case. That is faulty reasoning. So once again, faulty leadership has failed our country. Number 4, the border matters. Well, at least it used to. I mean, clearly the nonsense up in Canada is drifting south of the border. It's only a matter of time before they start locking up pastors who don't obey. But yeah, that hasn't quite happened yet. So we're just going to pretend that hasn't happened. And then, of course, south of the border, I mean, who knows what's coming across right now? Who knows what sort of stuff has been infiltrated? Hey, and I got to be honest. If there's anybody in my sphere of knowledge and influence that on a day-by-day basis works with guys that came over the right way, do the right thing, take care of their family, look out for their family, and do the best they can. Oh, and then on occasion travel back to look at their extended family, look after them, and make sure that they're taken care of. I mean, I got to give kudos to that. Because they're just looking to do better by their family. But does that not give the moral justification to pretend there's no border there? That does not give the moral justification to let 10% of a country below us, I mean on the map, geographically south of us. How about that? The country geographically south of us, whether it be Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Belize, Nicaragua, right? It doesn't matter which country it is. All those countries go up through Mexico and come here. And again, I'm sympathetic to their plight. Most of those countries are not that great. I don't know that I would want to be there if I had another option either. However, we have these things called rules. And people are supposed to play by those rules. We have this thing called a process. And people are supposed to follow the process. And, well, we can pretend that adding more Americans from other countries is a good thing for our country. And we can choose to overlook the obvious issues when we do that. The more pressing issue is the interior border. The interior border that separates us from California, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Illinois. Oh, you say, Stephen, but there is no internal border. Well, yeah, kind of there is. There is. We don't need those folks coming here and bringing their garbage with them. But the last two governors, actually last three governors, have made it their mission to import companies and their leadership team. And they come here and they bring their families and their friends with them because, hey, Texas is better. And it is for now. But we keep bringing in hundreds of thousands of people that have taken part in the destruction of their formerly great states, New York, California. And we're told, hey, don't worry, these people are conservatives. These people want to vote red. These people, they're on our team. And that may be so. But their children certainly aren't. I mean, heck, we barely got a finger on the pulse of our own children in our own school districts because we've been asleep at the switch. Meanwhile, the government propagandists, they own the school districts. They own the teachers' colleges. They're pumping out little socialists as quickly as they can. And the last year and a half has done nothing more than to teach our students to submit, to comply. Don't ask questions. Do what you need to do. Go along to get along. And their parents largely did the same thing. Yes, some bureaucrat, some nameless, faceless bureaucrat decided that you would be safer if you put a piece of cloth over your face. That you'd be safer if you stayed 6 feet apart from each other. That, well, somehow we can learn well over on an online course when, quite frankly, maybe 25, 30% of our students actually do that well. But it doesn't matter because people are scared. Yet there's apparently zero fear over the migration that's occurring right now. Whether that migration's from California and New York or Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. It doesn't really matter. Those folks coming here are not coming here to become Texans. They're not coming here to even to be Americans because, quite frankly, there's a whole lot of people in California, New York, New Jersey, Illinois that aren't really Americans. They may have even been born here, but they don't believe in the American spirit. They don't believe in the American culture. Then they're coming down to Texas, where Texas has got their own special culture, their own special history, whether it's Texian or Tejano. Those folks are the ones that should be most proud of Texas, and they're being quietly swept away by our current leadership, no matter what initial is after their name. And I got to tell you, the frustration that mounts in me every day as I look upon the fact that I'm supposed to be a good Republican. I'm supposed to be carrying the water of my Republican leadership, yet they just don't do what we need them to do. They just don't want to uphold their end of the bargain. And I ask myself, well, what more can I possibly do to encourage them to do the right thing? How can I force their hand to be responsive and helpful? And then I look at the facts. The facts are that our state reps and our state senators, they really aren't the problem. They pretty much do what we need them to do. It's all those other state reps and state senators. They're the ones that are the majority of the problem. Now I look at that and I say, but what if we just had one state rep that had fire in his belly and would show up in Austin and ring that bell and speak in that back mic and hold their feet to the fire? Would that make a difference? And I must conclude that the answer is yes. The answer was yes when Jonathan Stickland was there. The answer was yes when Matt Rinaldi was there. The answer is still yes with Brian Slayton being there. But the question is that enough? The answer is, I don't know. So what can we do? Because this directly translates into number 5. Number 5, liberty to choose matters. Now, I'm a Gen Xer, right? I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and I've heard for most of my life that women have the right to choose. My body, my choice. We're going to respect independent autonomy of individuals. They even give us the story about love is love, meaning that I can do whatever I want so long as the other person doesn't care. But that's all accepted. That's all normal. That's just the way it's supposed to be. Until we get to forcing people to cover their face. Forcing their people to submit to the emergency authorized use genetic therapy. And when you say, but Stephen, we're not really forcing that in Texas. I mean, the Governor Abbott, he put out an EO and he did this and he did that. Yeah, sure. And the hospitals and the major corporations promptly ignored him and say, well, that's fine. But we are not creatures of the state. We can do what we want. And we want you to comply. We want you to do this. Now today it may just be wearing a piece of cloth on your face. It may be just, taking that gene therapy. But tomorrow, what's it going to be? What are they going to require tomorrow if you want to keep your job? What are you going to be required to do tomorrow if you want to go grocery shopping? The tea leaves are there. Look in the stars if that's your preference. It's there. You can choose to ignore what's in the Bible, and that spells it out pretty clearly what's coming up. You can reject all religion if you just take a little bit of reason and look at the way things are going. You can see clearly that they're just going to continue to ratchet it up more and more. Limit your freedom, your liberty to choose. Your right to determine what goes in your body. Your right to determine what you ingest, how you dress, and what you cover yourself with. Now, I'm just curious, how is it in my lifetime, which basically goes from Roe versus Wade forward, when all we heard about was the various slogans that I threw at you before. Now suddenly it's meaningless. Now suddenly you must protect me to protect you. Huh? What? Oh, you mean my mask only works if your mask is on? Well, wait. But they're now telling us that gene therapy, that's only good unless you have your gene therapy. Well, which is it? That's not the way I understood all this. That's not the way science works. But hey, we just make this stuff up as we go along. But don't matter. Don't worry about that little thing called liberty. Don't worry about your body. Don't worry about your self-ownership. We know what's best for you. Just come along. Just give up just a little bit more of that liberty. Just don't worry about those things. We know what's best for you. In my mind, I'm picturing that, I think of the character as Gollum, right? And he's just quoting Precious, right? How dare you put your liberty, your freedom above my safety? I'm sorry. I am not willing to subject myself for no good reason to anything. I am foolish enough to think that my decision matters for my life. And so long as I'm not actively hurting somebody else, and I'm not actively depriving somebody of liberty, and I'm not actively depriving somebody of their stuff, I've done nothing wrong. I've done nothing to be ashamed of. I have not transgressed another. Perhaps we should keep that in mind when we're looking for our representatives. Perhaps we should keep that in mind when we're looking at proposed laws. Perhaps we should keep that in mind when we interact with people on a day-by-day basis. Ladies and gentlemen, that was my 5 for Friday. I hope that was at least slightly informative, perhaps entertaining, but well worth your time nonetheless. And I hope you appreciated the new music intro. And this is episode 104. I will see you on the other side.